Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatamil anbiya. Fasting has often been considered as a personal worship or devotion. Today we'll talk about how fasting brings a change in society or how social change takes place in Islamic context. Usually when we fast, then we develop a personal link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore a person early morning wakes up, takes a breakfast, and then throughout the day tries his or her best in coming up with a behavior and attitude which shows his servitude, obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to leave his home and walk towards masjid early morning, he does that. If Allah wanted him to, during the day, never take a single sip of water or any food, he does that. But is that enough? And is that what it means? If we look deeply into the fasting and its philosophy, we find that it's essentially a matter of changing social behavior, social habits, and social customs of people. A person who is fasting, first and foremost tries to understand by his or her behavior, is anyone being harmed, anything wrong is being done. If the person talks with a neighbor, with a friend, with a customer, then is the tone polite and kind, or the person is injuring the other person's ego? Similarly, when we are dealing in society with different kind of situations, say for example, a teacher has to come to his school or university or college. Does he come on time? And while in classroom, is the teacher concentrating on the subject matter or trying to be very casual, having jokes, having some kind of discussion with students which does not belong to their subject? When a person is not fulfilling his or her responsibility, this is a total violation of fasting, which means that when one is fasting, one has to ensure that responsibilities taken by the person are fully observed. Similarly, in the marketplace, when someone goes to shopping and you find a tuck shop, a place where you want to get some fast food or some fruit, and you get whatever quality is available, out of that you get something which you never wanted. You paid for a higher quality and got lower quality. The person who is selling these products during the month of Ramadan must have an understanding that it's not just abstention from food and water, but essentially a matter of observing proper measures. Ramadan or fasting means that one should be very careful about doing everything as supposed to be done. Therefore, if a person is not using proper scale while giving commodities to people, fruit or vegetable or anything else, then this person is not observing fast. A hadith tells us that if while you are fasting you use foul language or you hurt a person, then you have nullified your fasting, which means that it's not just a matter of personal piety, it's a matter of social behavior. The Quran in many places reminds us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants every believer to be honest, truthful and steadfast. Therefore, in this month, we hear people telling us you have to abstain from drinking and food because Allah wants you to have patience and sabr. Similarly, we also find that some people think if we are abstaining from food and drinking, then perhaps Islam is against nourishment, against food intake, and Islam wants people who get used to not taking anything from morning till evening, or they develop a habit of avoiding eating and drinking for several hours. That's not the objective of fasting. Hadith tells us very clearly that if a person has not behaved ethically in the fasting, then Allah does not want him to remain hungry and thirsty. Again, the purpose is to change social behavior, to modify our conduct, to make our way of life more relevant. Therefore, when we look deeply into the meaning of fasting, we find that it is essentially a collective effort. During Ramadan, it's not only one individual, but the whole family, even children are fasting. It's not just people in one country, but in all countries of the world, whether Muslims are a majority or minority makes no difference. People in America, Australia, in New Zealand, wherever they are, maybe in small number, but they observe fasting rigorously and join the whole global Muslim community. They become part of Muslim Ummah, which means that fasting is not an individual purification. It's a matter of global ibadah by Muslims during this whole month. This global phenomena automatically brings to light the objective of fasting, that is improvement of one's conduct and behavior, fighting against self-desires, fighting against short-term goals and objectives, and looking for the farther, longer goal, which is success in life hereafter. Therefore, everything done in fasting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is valued, recorded and accepted. And if a person is fasting just as social pressure because he works or she works in an organization, and in the organization people usually fast, therefore if you don't fast you become an odd person. If the purpose is to just align yourself with people around, then one has lost the meaning of fasting. It is a matter of collective effort on the part of Muslims to do a thing in a proper manner. It's not just personal remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but a collective remembrance. Therefore, whether we are in sports activities or in political activity, our behavior during month of fasting has to reflect very clearly that whatever we are doing is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say, for example, in a parliament, when opposition and ruling party are discussing a matter, is it a matter of just my party right or wrong, or truth? Ramadan or fasting teaches us that even when you are in parliament having a debate, you have to ensure that you stand for truth and not for loyalty to the party. Same applies in judiciary. When a matter comes to a judge, he needs to be responsible to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to just people around him. Whatever is truth and honestly findings of a case should be followed, and not a matter of whether having a personal relation with a attorney or any kind of affiliation with a person who has been brought as a criminal. All those links and relations are to be completely overlooked in favor of serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whenever a person inclines towards material gain, glamour, popularity, or getting endorsement from some people in his favor by doing an act, then one has lost the meaning of fasting. We find that if a person is fasting and driving an automobile and never stops on traffic light, if a person is fasting and while having an agreement to provide some products to a far off buyer or customer, and in that product this person makes a slight variation, say for example someone has ordered steel products, and there the quality of steel is over 100% less, then this person has lost his fasting, because what is required is to ensure that you deliver goods the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to deliver. The Quran says very clearly that you should use same measures, and for that matter the people of Sayyidina Shu'aib were given extreme punishment, because they were persons who will use scales when they receive commodities different than one they were giving commodities to others. For that simple reason, the whole nation of Sayyidina Shu'aib was destroyed. Ramadan, in another sense, tells us that in our public dealings, we have to ensure that whatever is expected is done, which means a conscious behavior, not a habitual behavior. Ramadan is a matter of training, education, upliftment, improvement, and quality enhancement. It's not a matter of just remaining hungry and thirsty for a specified period. This collectivity of Ramadan, the collectivity of fasting, is a unique aspect, and that makes a different kind of ibadah or worship or devotion than what exists in many world religions. Many world religions consider link of a devotee to the ultimate object, whatever name that may be. They may call him Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or God or Brahma or whatever they call it, makes no difference. If the link between the person and his ultimate objective is established, the majority of religions feel comfortable. In Islam it's not so. We have to link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his servants. If I'm making my long prayers, but I'm annoying my parents, if I'm making my fasting, but I'm not fulfilling obligation to my wife, if I'm fasting and not doing my job properly, not making best effort, then I am not observing ibadah. It's not worship, it's a mechanical activity. Ramadan brings that collective dimension that people all around the world, they have to ensure they are fasting consciously and not habitually. It does create a behavior pattern, but that behavior pattern which is done consciously and not mechanically. This is what makes fasting different than many other religions which have fasting as part of their self-purification exercise. We also find that the Quran talks about the attitude of taqwa or behavior pattern, which is the ultimate objective of fasting, as not confined to one single area. In a very elaborate Quranic statement in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines for us what is the meaning of this taqwa and what's the meaning of this piety or birr. Let me just read from the text the Quranic ayah that talks about it, and then it will be able in a better position to understand why fasting has been made obligatory for us. The Quran says, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء البأس. Righteousness does not consist in turning your faces toward the east or toward the west. True righteousness consists in believing in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book and prophets, and in giving away one's property in love of him to one kinsman, the orphans, the poor and the wayfarers, and those who ask for help, and freeing the necks of slaves and establishing prayer and zakah. The point here is extremely important. It's saying that piety, righteousness, taqwa or birr is not just facing towards east or west making prayer, not just fasting, not just believe in prophets and Allah and in last day, but giving property in love of Allah to the poor, the wayfarer, those who ask for help, and freeing necks of those who are bounded or slaves. Now these 5 important aspects highlight the objective of taqwa and birr. If a person is amassing wealth and having fast, but not caring for people who are poor, if a person is doing his best effort to make money while people are hungry and thirsty and without dress, if a person is doing his best as chief executive of an organization and doing his job very well professionally, but he has no concern for people who have been enslaved. Slavery is not just a matter of physical slavery, but it's a matter of intellectual slavery, spiritual slavery, mental slavery, and slavery in those forms which we never realize, like cultural subjugation.